Hey there, Ethan here from Edge of NFT, and I'm back again at Davos, hanging out at the Crypto House, a very lively scene with lots of interesting personalities running through it. And I'm here with Marcus Shingles, who I think we're going to be really fascinated to get some insights from and find out what he's up to. I'm going to let Marcus introduce himself and tell him where he's coming from today.
Yeah, hi Ethan. So I'm based in the U.S. I split my time between Los Angeles and Jackson Hole, Wyoming. And I'm here in Davos because I'm part of the expert network for the World Economic Forum's Fourth Industrial Revolution. I'm currently doing a blockchain research project with Henning Diedrich, who's a very well-known blockchain engineer around food supply chain traceability. Just by way of background, I come from the professional services field. I was a partner at Deloitte Consulting, leading the innovation practice with emerging tech. I then left Deloitte to take the CEO position at the X Prize Foundation. That's a nonprofit that does global competitions. And then I went on from there to do a stint at Bain Consulting, management consulting, before getting into my current role where I'm responsible for designing a smart city in Chiang Mai, Thailand, on 15 square miles as part of an aerotropolis, an airport in a city. So I've been hired to oversee that whole development around the sustainable energy, e-government, DAOs with blockchain, water sustainability, waste management, education. It's a pretty comprehensive thing. And what I'm most excited about is I run a nonprofit that I founded with a group of young people from low-income communities that I've been mentoring for years, and we're doing some really exciting things with the United Nations around Metaverse and related. So that's my latest.
Awesome. Well, I would say in response to all that, the future is here, and you're living in it and creating it.
Potentially.
Yeah, that's very exciting. And you gave a lot of context for where you've come from in terms of your background. And I'm just curious, was there a moment before you were, I would describe you as a bit of a futurist in terms of all the things you're involved with, maybe a technologist. Was there a moment that you weren't and you made a transition? And how was the progress of you kind of getting involved in this kind of change-making stuff?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if the futurist label fits on me so much because usually most futurists, and I'm not being derogatory about futurists, usually most futurists they don't have the handcuffs of pragmatic implementation. And ideas are easy, the execution's hard. And I'm an operator, working at firms like Deloitte or Bain or even my own management consulting businesses that I run. I've always had to start a project and finish it, a major initiative. So you can hear a lot of people talking about NFTs or blockchain or DAOs or e-government or whatever it might be. I'm usually the one on the hook that actually has to implement a very large-scale implementation and go through the real pain and struggles of trying to do that. And it also separates the hype from reality when you do that. So I think I'm a forecaster of where technology is going and understanding it very well, whether it's AI or robotics or 3D printing or VR or blockchain or what have you. But I also am more pragmatic in terms of what can actually be used to do real things, even very innovative, disruptive things, because I definitely feel like I push the limits. But it's really understanding what's ready for prime time now versus something that sounds real sexy and real neat, but it's not implementable for a while.
Yeah, I totally appreciate that, yeah. and it's a struggle, and it's probably far underappreciated, right? The amount of struggle that goes into that.
I'll give you a good example if you'd like.
Yeah.
It'll kind of segue into kind of my passion project I'm doing with my nonprofit. So 2 years ago, I was doing a lot of work around Metaverse and virtual reality. This was before Zuckerberg changed his name from Facebook, before it got popular. So 2 years ago, when not a lot of people were talking about this. But it was obvious to me and to my peers who have been in the space for a while that there was this inflection point that was starting to happen. The technology, the hardware, was hitting an inflection point where something that was not working very good to do virtual reality have all of a sudden really scaled to a point where it was exceptional technology, or at least an inflection point to where it was ready for prime time. It wasn't making you sick and the field of view was much better. And then of course Oculus came out with a price point that made sense. And so when that happened about a year and a half ago, if you look at the Oculus One, that's when that came out. Again, how do you separate hype from reality? If you started to use those headsets, they are primarily consumption environments. I mean, you were gaming, or you were using it even in a business setting. You were using it to be shared something that someone else created for you, And if you wanted to create, there was no tools to do that. COVID came along, and the demand for companies to want to build stuff went way up, so the VCs started to put tons of money into these platforms to make them production environments, not just consumption. And on top of that, the development environments themselves went from technical coding type of development environments, really skilled technical resources, to where literally during COVID, the platform started to produce functionality almost like you see in PowerPoint, where you could get into a virtual reality space, and rather than having a graphic design artist build you something in some sophisticated software package, you could actually get in there and start using the features and functions of the software to build a space. So if I wanted to build this restaurant in virtual reality 3 years ago, it would have cost me $100,000, and it would have taken me a while to do it. I'd need specialized skills. Today, a headset, one of my team members from Exponential Destiny, the nonprofit I run, who was born and raised in South Central Los Angeles, first generation high school graduate, let alone college, getting into college, they could put on that headset, and without having the technical skill, like a coding skill, which not everybody has, especially if you're coming out of a public school in a low-income community, because they're not getting that type of education, he or she could actually build out this whole environment through just a creative mindset and understanding the sophistication of the tool, the features and the functions. Just like you can be a power user in PowerPoint or Excel and use pivot tables, it's the same thing. And so when I started to identify that the skill set was being democratized, I started to atrophy myself from the big consulting firms that I was working with, and started to instead hire young people from low-income communities that I had been mentoring since they've been 15. So there was this first group that I actually co-founded my nonprofit with, which I said, guys, listen, there's something pretty crazy happening. I know I've told you a lot about blockchain and NFTs and all this stuff going on. I know, Samantha, you're an art major. That's not your thing. You're not going to learn that stuff, admittedly. You could if you wanted to, but you don't. It's just not where your interest is. Well, here's the good news. Virtual reality has gotten to a point where you can get in there and create things for companies that let them do things in magical ways, whether it's training, education, learning, sales, marketing. You can just create any environment you want. And it's happening now, and I guarantee within 2 years, every business, every company, every person will have a website in the metaverse. They'll have an immersive and experiential model that they have, right? Every brand. Right. So if we start now, you'll be way ahead of the curve and you'll be relevant. That was a year and a half ago. Now that Facebook changed their name to Meta and everybody's talking about it, these young people are way ahead of the curve. So the nonprofit we run is quickly using this window of opportunity to train as many young people or adult learners who are in economically stressed situations, who don't have the skill set to get a job in the new economy. We see this as an opportunity to pull them into that immediately and get them skilled in this. And so that's what we do.
Yeah, I love that. And we see that kind of a leapfrog capability all 100%. Across the Web3 space. I mean, whether it comes to the individuals and their access, as we see kind of people in the Philippines having access to income through a game like Axie Infinity, or just the ideas of bringing property ownership onto the blockchain and bring sort of accountability and immutability to spaces where there's not that existing infrastructure like the courthouse and the deeds and the record keeping that we have in more established nations, right? It's incredible. Mm-hmm. Tell me a little bit more about your involvement in the UN. Tell me about Davos and your experience here.
Well, I'll share what. Yeah, I mean, I'm officially partnered with. I'm officially working with the ITU, which is a specialized agency of the United Nations that's responsible for AI, internet connection, all that. If you look at the UN as a whole, the one group that's responsible for all the digital tech is the ITU. When I was CEO of XPRIZE, we launched the AI for Good Summit. Many people are familiar with that. It's done really well. It's still going, right? So they asked me to do the opening keynote at their Digital Transformation Summit in Geneva, Switzerland at the UN, at their ITU Summit on February 28th. So it was about 2 months ago. And for that opening keynote, which was it was like a 3-day summit. This was the very first session. I brought the 6 young people from South Central Los Angeles, and they showed up with me on stage, because there's nothing more compelling than me talking about the Sustainable Development Goals and the opportunity of the Metaverse to lift people out of poverty, to give economic opportunity to people, kind of, the SDGs. I don't want to be the guy from California saying, "Oh, this is easy." So I had the young people get up and do most of the presentation. And for example, Juan, who's on my team, stood up there and said, "A year ago, I worked at Target stores, the retailer stocking shelves. Then I followed Marcus on a project that he invited me in just to shadow him, because he was helping a company, a consumer product company, use the Metaverse to experiment with using VR to do training and education. When that project ended after 12 weeks, Marcus finished the strategy project. The client, the CEO of the client said, okay, Marcus, we want to move forward with your recommendation and your advice that we should set up a department. We totally see the potential here. We know we'll grow into it. It's evolving. But yeah, we have 200,000 distributors and we need to train them. And it's COVID. We'd love to start scaling this. Do you have anyone you'd recommend that we can hire to help us run this department? And I'm like, why not you hire Juan? And they're like, oh, the 19-year-old on the project, we loved him, but we didn't want to steal him from you. I'm like, no, that's the whole idea. Employ him, please. So he told that story, and now he leads the VR department at a global consumer product company.
It's incredible.
Amazing, right? And we could do all that all day long, because the key is you just have to be the first one out there. In 2 years, everyone will have the skill set. It'll be a commodity. So the key is to be relevant now, to adopt the skill set now. And whenever you find an opportunity to do the leapfrog, I think we have somewhat of a responsibility to say, well, who in society needs to do leapfrog right now? It's probably the ones that if they don't get this leapfrog, they're going to be behind forever.
Right.
And so let's go to schools that are really under-resourced, don't have the right funds, and let's work with their students to get them in this space. What my nonprofit does now is we were doing commercial projects like that consumer product company, but we actually pivoted, because where would a young person even be more relevant to a client? It's if that client is a high school, because they're young themselves.
Right.
So now we work with the 6th largest school district in the U.S. in Broward County. We're currently doing a project in Chicago, the west side of Chicago. And what we do is we approach the school, we raise all the money, we go into the school and we say, look, we raised X dollars to come in, get you headsets, and then take you through a 6-month process to help you create new curriculum and educate people using this magical skill set, that using software that's essentially free, very low cost on the software, and a headset that costs $300. And you as teachers and students will be able to build experiences that you just couldn't build before to do education and learning, whatever the topic is, whether it's traditional stuff like math and science, or Florida chose how do I make healthy decisions or when I have a budget on how I eat. Because their issue was obesity and diabetes, and they said, students, tune out when we talk about this. You can't show them a PowerPoint presentation or lecture to them about it. We maybe build for them a virtual supermarket and gamify it, and this is the stuff you can do. But all those experiences were designed and built by other 19 and 20-year-olds that are in the profession.
Yeah.
And then when we get done with the high school, they have a curriculum that they can now do themselves. They're not dependent on us. And the seniors that were part of the high school, we then hire them for the next school.
That's incredible. Yeah. It's great. It's great stuff. And as someone who, I wouldn't say that I came from the least privileged background, but I did come from a background where I had to really work pretty hard. I went through
Same here.
I got a scholarship from the Chicago Scholars Foundation out of high school, which luckily I was just granted. Yeah, I grew up
in Michigan.
Excellent.
I lived in Chicago for a while.
Okay, nice. I was born in Alma, Michigan, actually.
Okay.
But yeah, we'll connect more after the interview. But yeah, luckily they gave me, they sought out students like me and gave me a scholarship. I didn't really even know about the scholarship application process, you know? And so finding these folks like you're saying and taking a minute to say you need this and you can do something with this, and having people in the know share that, I think it's very powerful.
Yeah.
So we want to make sure before we run that we share exactly how those people can get involved, the young people, that target audience.
Well, there's something fun thanks for that. So there's something really fun we did. When we did that UN speech on February 28th, we ended the topic with announcing, with the support of the ITU, of the UN's ITU agency, a global competition. So this is kind of, as the former CEO of X Prize launching global competitions, I know a thing about how to run a prize model. Basically, we're going to crowdsource the world by asking them, form a team. You can have 2 people on a team, you can be you and a friend, or you can have up to 6 people on the team. You can choose anyone in the world you want to be on your team. Find a team members. Then go to the 17 SDGs. Pick the SDG that resonates you with the most out of the 17, right? Zero hunger, no poverty, sustainable consumption and production, whatever the SDG is. Then start attending Exponential Destiny's webinars where we're going to coach you on how to get into the software and create stuff. It's not rocket science, right?
Yeah.
And then you have 8 months to build the most fantastic thing that your imagination can come up with that builds empathy, awareness, and education for that SDG. We're not asking you to solve the SDG. We're saying create something that's so engaging and so magical with your imagination, using all the powers of virtual reality and all the tools here, even if you introduce NFTs and other things into the model, just make it so that it's sticky, it's engaging, this wow factor, but also it educates people on this is the challenges or opportunities with this SDG, and teams have 8 months to put that together, and then we're going to pick the top winners out of 2 age groups, 14 and 18-year-olds, and the 19-year-olds and above. So you pick the age group you're in, and if you come in as the top winner, when we do the evaluation, you'll be on the UN stage with us at the next ITU Summit next May, where the Secretary General of the ITU and that whole group and I will be presenting you with the award. Plus, we're raising hundreds of thousands of dollars around the whole model. So, for example, Jessica Alba is the CEO of The Honest Company, besides being in her career as an actress. The Honest Company, Nick Vallejos and Jessica Alba provided us with $30,000 for the one SDG that's important to them, sustainable consumption and production. So we've done similar with the other SDGs, and we're going to continue to raise from funders to get each SDG covered. So we anticipate that if you're the overall top winner, you're going to get upwards of $30,000 to $50,000. But even the top in just your SDG, we're already accruing the sponsorship funds to where we're getting to like $5,000 to $10,000 per SDG, per age group. We hope to hit that target, if not more. So there's a real incentive. You might win money, but the goal is have fun, be part of a community, and learn a new skill set. And learn a new skill set trying to express something about a sustainable development goal. The information to sign up and register if people are interested, and remember, this is a nonprofit thing, it's not commercial. I receive no compensation whatsoever from the whole model. It's www.sdgmetaverseprize.org. Okay. And people can find out all the information, and now's the time to register. Next Monday in Kigali, Rwanda, my team and I are going to Rwanda to be part of the Global Youth Summit that they're having. They're going to have 4,000 young people virtually and about 1,000 in person, and we're using that as the kickoff for teams to start to register, and that's how people can get involved.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much for sharing that with us. We'll be sharing that with our audience. We'll put it out on socials, and we'll make sure people get involved and happy to be a part of what you're cooking up.
Thank you. Appreciate that, Ethan.